Hello everyone and welcome to TRTN and welcome back to VSR Phoenix. You've joined us before for Season 7, all through the 16 rounds that comprised last season. You now join us on the precipice of Season 8 here at the premiere round. I, of course, am Regan Clark, and you join me at Schuyler County, Watkins, Glen, New York State, in the United States of America. A bright and sunny day here at Watkins Glen International. Introduced in 1956 as a permanent structure with history dating back as far back as 1948, consisting of 11 turns, 3.4 miles of FIA Grade 2, Watkins Glen is owned in the current day by NASCAR and operates all three of its major series in the United States, the NASCAR Cup, Xfinity and Craftsman Truck Series, as well as hosting the Trans Am Series and the IMSA Sports Car Championship 6 hours of Watkins Glen, formerly hosting as well the IndyCar Series' Grand Prix at the Glen until 2017. It is a fantastic circuit, a real jewel here in the United States, and what a set piece then for our opening round of the championship as we shortly get on to qualifying here and now. Plenty to discuss then as we get underway almost immediately then with the qualifying session. 20 minutes on the clock here in round one's qualifying, and picking up where we left off last season, having a look at last season's division winners for Season 7. In the gold category, it was just Boris. In silver, it was VSR Otzi. And in bronze, it was VSR Antion. If you want to take a look at how that scales out over the course of the entirety of VSR's operations, it puts Boris at the top of the charts for Season 7. That's his first career championship in VSR Phoenix. And that is almost on his way to matching the joint record at the moment, which is 2 seasons. That was held by VSR Chris between Seasons 3 and 6. See, just a bit of trouble there for Regent on his going rate here around the outer loop on his first running out lap in that Ford Mustang as well. And plenty to discuss in the way of car swaps coming into this season. Part of the new regulations for Season 8 entail only one car available, no car swaps and no livery swaps. So what you see in this round is what you're going to get from 99% of our crowd today. As we check in here with Blue Frog, he's towards the back of a brand new pack of cars. Him as well joining Ford for this championship. We'll be more onto that in a moment's time. We try and get on board with the car leading the fray. You can see SN Quiz there up towards the front row. Right in front of them, though, is a brand new name for Season 8. Let's try and get on board with them here. The number 54 of White Doctor. Now, he'll be competing from the silver categories. We've got wonderful new stream graphics that we developed over the course of the last week, just especially for this championship, and they look wonderful with these brand new drivers, brand new names, brand new numbers, and brand new cars for that matter. It's a fresh start here, a bit of spring cleaning for VSR Phoenix, and White Doctor will be the first to start setting flying laps in the Aston Martin. And whilst he does that, we'll discuss then the myriad of car swaps that have entailed over the course of Season 7 to Season 8. Starting us off, we can see that Just Boris, last season's champion, has made his move over to Lamborghini. Now, we saw this in round 16 of the championship at Suzuka, of which we covered only a few weeks ago. The Blue Frog has moved to Ford from BMW. Elite Cassie moves from Mercedes to BMW. VSR Chris moving from BMW to Aston Martin. ETE Gilles moving from Ford to McLaren. Regent from Ferrari to Ford. Soviet Mario from BMW to McLaren. Tyler Vermack did 2 cars over the course of 1 season. Ferrari, then Ford, and now settles in with Aston Martin. We'll be seeing his progress over the course of this qualifying session today. VSR Antion moves from Ferrari to Ford, with Boy Shea moving from McLaren to Lamborghini. Chris MCK08 moves from Porsche to Ferrari. Funky Fish moves from Aston Martin to Porsche. Grizz moves from McLaren to Audi, and Otzi, the Silver Series champion, moves from Aston Martin to McLaren. Further expanded on that, VSR Pete moves from McLaren to Audi. SN Quiz moves from BMW to Ford. Taz MCFC moves from Ford to McLaren. Tommy Johansson moves from McLaren to Aston Martin. GTR Twiglet, one of our more famous drivers of Season 7 who ran the Lexus RCF, moves away from Lexus into the arms of Mercedes AMG. VSR Abok moves from BMW to Ferrari. Dollar Up moving from McLaren to Lexus, giving us our one and only RCF for this season as well. Aussie 207 leaves Aston Martin for Porsche. Rafing leaves Ferrari for Audi. Smiler from Porsche to Aston, and Hin Hin Pappy from Ford to Ferrari. Now, what does this mean in statistics here? Well, the most moved 2 teams have been Aston Martin, Ford and McLaren over the course of this, with 4 driver moves from all 3 of them. The least moved to was Lexus and Lamborghini, but proportionally that's the highest for Lexus, as that is a 100% return rate. Checking in then with White Doctor as we head down towards the line. 16.5 minutes then on qualifying, and our first time's about to ring in today. It's going to be a lot of information to process in such a small amount of time, recounting last season's race wins. We'll get onto that in a moment as we see SN Quiz go provisionally fastest. And right away, before we cover last season's wins, let's get a quick gander at today's qualifying predictions, and it is looking to be especially interesting. OSR Saturn, a brand new driver for this season, competing up in the gold category, is slated at pole position by about 0.2 of a second. He did a 1:43.638 with Lamborghini, and that's faster than last season's champion, Just Boris, by about 0.2, as we mentioned there. He's also going to be running with Lamborghini, so it's going to give us a very unique perspective of an all-Lamborghini front row, if all things are said and done. Right now, we can see it's very strong suiting for Aston Martin. Tyler Vermack's up to second. White Doctor holds on to third. Right now, fastest is SN Queese with Ford. More to follow on that. Looking further down the line, Blue Frog is predicted at third. White Doctor, one of our newcomers for Silver, who we were watching on board with there, is predicted at fourth, ahead of Tyler Vermack. So right now, that's a self-fulfilling prophecy, that gap between Vermack and Doctor, but at the moment, it's gone inverse, with Vermack now faster, up to second, and really wrestling that Aston up through the inner loop chicane. Checking in then with the pole sitters, you can see Regent there behind him as well, who's predicted at 10th. And right now, from beyond the top 5, VSR Chris predicted 6th, Grizz 7th, Soviet 8th, Boy Shay 9th, and Regent in 10th. Plenty to discuss over the course of this opening qualifying session, and with just over 5 minutes covered right now, SN Queese fastest, Tyler Vermack second fastest, White Doctor third fastest, Blue Frog in fourth, and that's pushed out there by ETE Giles, who was a resident driver for Ford Performance last season. He accounted for 2 and only race wins for Ford Performance in Season 7, now moves across to McLaren. So that is a very, very peculiar state of affairs. And speaking of last season's race wins, this is the last season in numbers, and that is quite an extensive list to cover. 16 rounds, 2 super sprint rounds, 2 endurance rounds to cover as well, and over half of them, 11 to be total, were given out to Just Boris in that McLaren, and then on his last ever foray in the season with Lamborghini at round 16 of the championship. Right now, though, Blue Frog goes fastest with Ford. That's a Ford all-front row, with Aston Martin making up the second row, McLaren making up the third row. And more importantly, let's discuss balance of performance coming into this round, as it looks like Aston Martin are really against the ropes here, as they've got the most amount of weight of any one car in this class, 15 kilos ahead of Mercedes' 13 and Audi's 12. Meanwhile, Ford Performance are leisurely plus 3 kilos. Lexus, BMW, Porsche and Ferrari will be laughing their way all the way to the end of qualifying. Right now, Lamborghini stuck somewhere in the middle, and you can see for Just Boris that he's only 0.04 of a second away from his casual return to pole position, let's say it. It doesn't matter what car you put him in, he always finds his way towards that front row, and that was the tenacity we saw prominently on display all through last season. Looking at the calendar then for Season 8, it's a shorter but sweeter championship on the books here. 11 weeks of racing ahead of us and only 14 rounds. Notably, the removal of all of the endurance rounds. That category now phased out for Season 8, as we're seeing a prominent rise in sprint races. The super sprint format giving us double trouble on race day, and that would be from round 3 to 4, round 7 to 8, and round 11 to 12. That'll be at Red Bull Ring, Snetterton, and the circuit Ricardo Tormo, otherwise going by Valencia. You see right now we're here in Watkins Glen. Next round will be at Spa, then to Red Bull for our first super sprint, then we're at my home circuit of Silverstone for round 5 of the championship. Thoroughly looking forward to that on the 21st of May. Right after, at round 6, we'll be at the circuit Zolder, then on to the second super sprint at Snetterton for round 7 and 8 of the championship. Then we're over to the Temple of Speed on the 11th of June at the circuit Monza. Then we're at the circuit Paul Ricard for round 10, another and final super sprint round at the circuit Ricardo Tormo. And then we're off to Barcelona for triple trouble in Spain before we go back to where it all started in Season 7, as the finale round for Season 8 brings us back to Johannesburg, South Africa at the circuit Kyalami. It's going to be a very interesting championship at the moment, as we see here with Just Boris right towards the end of his lap, as he's dropped down to 5th quite some way there. Does he make his way back up to the front row on this lap? Not this time around, and it's a peculiar state of affairs here as we tick down towards 10 minutes left. White Doctor, one of our newcomers, and OSR Saturn alongside him there make up that second row. Aston Martin and Lamborghini looking particularly strong despite those weight increases over the balance of performance, especially for Aston. So I must say, plus 15 kilos, and White Doctor is still banging out laps close to pole position right now. It looks like an unrivaled performance today for Ford, and that was right before we saw the presence of this driver here, OSR Saturn, taking pole position. The Flying Frenchman taking a bizarrely fast time on his entry to this series. There were high hopes leading into this. Of course, he was predicted at pole position in our quali predictions leading up to this event, and he is not disappointed at all. The number 17 appearing on screen at the moment as the number 2. Really wowing expectations coming into this round of the championship. Hopefully, we are to see a potential big battle play out. That's a big slide off, though, at the end of the inner loop chicane. Getting a replay on that. This is going to be a major trouble, and it was a major trouble back during Lamborghini's first introduction of the Evo 2, and this appeared alongside the Ferrari 296 and I believe the Ford Mustang, if memory serves, and it's a stability concern. It is a razor-sharp car, the Lamborghini Huracan, one not to be trifled with, and going over those curbs is going to be a real challenge, especially on a circuit more accustomed to oval and stock car types of vehicles like the NASCAR Cup, Xfinity and Craftsman Truck Series. A circuit like the Watkins Glen International is not kind to European machinery. Will it be kinder then to one of its own, the Ford Mustang? And the furthest up the order for Ford at the moment is the Blue Frog, sporting the number 61 now on the 7th generation Ford Mustang GT3, Ford's first GT3 car since the legendary Ford GT GTE back in 2017. So warming up for another flying lap. And I believe we may have had a bit of an issue with our quali timer there, so sadly we're going to have to pack that one away. Still a work in progress piece of equipment. Yeah, Nico in chat has already pointed that one out, that the timer was wrong. 9 minutes left to go in qualifying then. We're still working away trying to get 2 timers installed. We've had a few complaints in, of course, before that we've not had a qualifying timer coming into these sessions, and this was notably in some of the other leagues we were working with. As a way of rolling out new features across the board on TRTN, not every single time are we going to get things right here, so do bear with us whilst we try and root out some of the core issues with that system coming into this leg of the championship. Fortunately, our race timer should be working as per usual, so do keep a close eye on that. So checking in with the Blue Frog. As we mentioned, furthest up the order for the Blue Oval right now. Ford really does have a message to send across the paddock here at their first home race of Season 8. Right now, they're just shy of half a second away from OSR Saturn. That was a remarkable opening time then by the Lamborghini. Is this the precedent to be set coming into Season 8 that Lamborghini's time to rise is finally nigh? Or will it be another glory for Ford and McLaren? Right now, though, with Just Boris securing the front row, getting second there by 0.2 of a second, it is looking remarkably strong. Just checking then with Blue Frog as he barrels down to the line. Behind him is VSR Smiler, who makes his debut drive for Aston Martin. Checking with Smiler as he crosses the line there. Still 24th after that last lap. Record high numbers for the opening round of the championship. It's looking to be a very, very grand opening. Checking around to see where our next times are coming from. It's the number 11 car, VSR Racing, moving away from the Ferrari 488 and into the arms of Audi Sport, a rising name as well. Just like its sister team, Lamborghini, the R8 was co-developed alongside the Huracan, shares the same V10 engine, and that signature note is a proper sonorous wail. Do expect to hear plenty more V10s coming into this leg of the season. It is just an absolute racket, much like the V12 Vantage in our neighbouring series, the NLRL Sunday League, of which we'll be heading to this Sunday, of course, at Silverstone for round 8 of the championship. It is a very signature note coming out of both of these cars. This is going to be the de facto soundtrack, had any I had mind about it, for Season 8, is that sound of the Audi Lamborghini co-engineered V10. And it is just a pity then that the R8 and the time of the R8 is long since past us. Audi discontinuing their customer program a few years back. The R8 now a figment of the past, and the Lamborghini Huracan soon to follow it, soon to be replaced by Lamborghini's upcoming Temerario, of which will feature a twin turbocharged V8. Following on with the norm then, can Lamborghini retain some of the iconic mantle it held as a manufacturer coming into the next generation? That is really a question on everyone's mind. Right now, they're looking towards the end of qualifying, trying to find our next time at the moment. I believe comes from, it was not the 81, it is the 61. I think we've just missed them there on their way to the line. And And that is the Blue Frog, just crossing the checkered flag there. And no improvement on time. No improvement on this lap in particular. The number 26 is next towards the line. It's Soviet Mario. As you can see, a bit of an issue there for... That was Shawnee Mack, one of the new drivers in bronze. There'll be more to cover over the next couple of rounds about the dynamic going on in silver, gold, and bronze. Of course, clean slate for all at this brand new round of the championship. Looking at the charts there, it's 5 minutes 45 minutes left to go. 5 minutes 45 seconds left to go. Let's see if we can get the English correct for the opening stream. Mighty embarrassing from us here. Checking in with Just Boris. On his way down towards the inner loop chicane. It is a very tough section of the track on the more featherweight machinery from Ferrari, Lamborghini, and even I would say at a push Audi as well. Despite its roughneck nature and thoroughbred attitude towards racing, of course, the Audi was forged in the crucible of the Nürburgring, whereas the Lamborghini has made its name more prevalent in the sort of long open straights of Monza and the curving, winding sections of Imola. They're two cars and two different sides of the same coin, but two broadly different mentalities. Let's see then if Lamborghini can upset its rather upper-class appearance by giving us an absolutely feral performance in the opening round of the championship. Right now, Just Boris is flying with a vengeance in the 999, looking to usurp the time of brand new pole sitter OSR Saturn. And it is going to be a remarkable championship to follow if these two are going to keep things as close as they are in machines as unstable as the Lamborghini Huracan. It is going to make for one dramatic opening. Their real challenge then is going to be keeping their nerves iron in will, going down into not only the 90 at turn 1, all the way up through the S's at turn 3 and 4, and then onto the inner loop chicane for the first time, with upwards of 20 plus cars barreling down on their necks as we head into the opening lap. Right now, though, we're on board with the Blue Frog yet again inside our top 10 as things continue to unfold for Ford. They hold that second row with an iron vice at the moment. Closest gap at the moment is between Regent and White Doctor in 4th and 5th for the Ford team. That's in and around 0.07 of a second between 4th and 5th. It is an incredibly close opening quali, just how we like it here on VSR Phoenix. Checking around the map, the number 2 is next towards the line as we speak, so having a gander here to try and find the number 2 just before he hits the start-finish line. It's OSR Saturn. We're still adjusting to the fact that he's using the number 2 on our charts. Coming into this race, he was set to appear in the number 17 Lamborghini, neither here nor there, as he crosses the line at 1:43.758. Doesn't open the gap any much further to Just Boris's Lamborghini. The number 982, that was Funky Fish across the line, goes up to 13th with Porsche. This is going to be a very interesting season for Funky Fish. Of course, the last time we saw him was behind the wheel of the Aston Martin V8 Vantage. Now, this is, by all strengths, the complete opposite in terms of GT3 and in terms of handling feel to the Aston. The Porsche is, by its very nature, the total antithesis of the Aston Martin V8 Vantage. Engines in the back, it's very skittish, but very good on corner exit, whereas the Aston's great on corner entry, understeery on corner exit. It's flipping everything that he understands on his head coming into Season 8, and this is going to be one of the biggest challenging stories coming out of Season 8 in the court of Funky Fish, and especially in that silver category, of which he was a runner-up last season to VSR Otzi, who retains his mantle inside the silver category for whatever reason, not making the move up into the crucible. That is the gold category at the moment. You can see one driver that could be making his way up to gold prematurely is White Doctor. He is firmly stuck in amongst staple gold names from last season. Region in front of him, Essenquist behind him, Tyler Vermack as well with ETE Giles and VSR Christie, two-time champion, all inside that top 10. Elite Cassie, on his move to BMW away from Mercedes, has just been squeezed out by Soviet Mario on his first foray here with McLaren away from BMW. And while only 2 Lamborghinis were moved into, there are 3 in this championship. We just check in again with OSR Saturn across the line. The gap did get closer as the Blue Frog usurped the gap between Boris and Saturn by about 1/10 of a second. He put himself between 0.117 of a second to pole position. And as we close on the end of qualifying here, 1 minute and 20 left to go, we're amongst our final laps. It is an incredibly close top three there, all separated by just under 0.3 of a second. I think it just got even closer there with that last lap from Just Boris. So that's now firmly within 0.3 of a second, 0.234. Chris MCK08 goes 4 fastest, and that puts 4 cars within half a second. To give you some perspective here, the average human reaction time can be anywhere between 1 and 0.4 of a second, depending on person to person. Your average adult will be in and around, with adrenaline applied, about 0.140 of a second. This is remarkable to see. That this is quite literally, for some people in the audience, blink and you'll miss it, and it'll blink and you'll miss 4 of them at the moment, just outside that half-second threshold, getting to the line there. Does he make his way into the infamous 5 here? Not this time around for Regent. He's very, very close, though, and it's a very strong qualifying on his first time with 4s away from Ferrari. So a lot of drivers sort of getting around those teething issues, the more adaptable in the crowd, are definitely going to have the upper hand coming into the opening rounds of the championship before everyone settles into their own unique rhythm. Right now, you're seeing a symphony orchestra out of the top 10. It is remarkably close. And you can see here, right towards the end, VSR, Chris and ETG are dead set on the exact same time, both within 0.999 of a second to pole position. That is incredibly close. Saturn brings it in then, hoping that what he's done is enough for his first qualifying session to first pole position. That is remarkable stuff. I think we saw very similar stuff out of Just Boris. So could Boris have met his match? And with the rising crowd all around him, Chris MCK08 and the Blue Frog making remarkable moves towards that top 4 on their entry runs with Ford and Ferrari, are making for a very exciting opening round. We're just going to check in with Tyler Vermack, as he's just in front of the Blue Frog here, making his way down towards the line on his last run in qualifying. Where does the South African place himself? 7th, with Aston Martin. Blue Frog bringing it into the pits. Just Boris was by 0.002 of a second. Oh my word. 0.002 of a second. That is already, we're 1 round in. That is history there, because unless anyone can tell me otherwise, is that not the closest qualifying mark for the front row in VSR history? 0.002 of a second. 3 drivers within the amount of time it takes for you to react is an insane statistic. We'll be getting onto the grid very shortly, but whilst we've got the opportunity, let's quickly discuss some recent news across the world of motorsports. The first of which coming from the world of the World Endurance Championship. The Le Mans Hypercar regulations have been extended to 2032. The Le Mans Hypercar regulations, of course, came in only a few years back, and with its sister offshoot, the LMDH regulations used in the IMSA Sports Car Championship, we have seen one of the most plentiful varieties of endurance racing prototypes in the history of endurance racing. We've seen entries out of Ferrari, Porsche, Toyota, Lamborghini, Cadillac, Peugeot, Alpine, BMW, Acura, Vanwall, Isotta Fraschini, Glickenhaus, and Aston Martin. We're soon to see entries from Genesis, Ford, and McLaren, and that's set to extend all the way to the end of the 2020s, and the nearest available reconsideration of the rule set will happen in 2032, if not 2033. I think all endurance racing fans are clapping their hands in unison here. That is a proper good bit of news to hear coming into the next couple of seasons of the World Endurance Championship. Now on to the World Rallying Championship, as Toyota dons a brand new silver livery for their summer leg of the World Rally Championship. Now this image comes from WRC.com, and it is looking mighty impressive for the Toyota team. Of course, riding on the highs of their most recent successes in the Islas Canarias rally, with Kalle Rovanperä going 12 stages undefeated, the Flying Finn sort of rekindling the mantle of his former 2-time championship winning performance. Toyota are now moving into this in much similar vein to what we saw from Hyundai last year with the reflective gold roofs. This is an effort to keep the drivers and co-drivers cooler in the more hotter stages in the upcoming Rally Sardinia and Rally Portugal, namely, which is the next coming round. And it is looking very nice to see that return. This could be a potential offshoot for some of the other elements of Toyota Gazoo Racing to change over to this brand new colour scheme, as most of them have been running the same stealth black carbon livery for the last year or so. Now this extends across Stock Car Pro Brazil, BTCC, and the World Endurance Championship. So it's going to be very interesting to see where things go for Toyota, both in their WRC team and both across the board. And as we check the grid here, we've got about 2 minutes to go. And our next bit in the WRC news is, amidst protests in the last couple of rounds by the World Rally Driver Association, the FIA concedes to protest and is now considering changes to its infamous swearing policy. This was after Adrian Formo received the same fixed penalty for fines, €10,000. This was the same penalty given to Max Verstappen. When you consider how much of a price difference there is in the salary between a Grand Prix driver and a rallying driver, it's any wonder how that stirred up such a fuss with WRDA. And now the FIA has conceded to considering future changes to that swearing ban. That is very, very good news. The last bit of news then, it's a bit somber for the EA WRC fans in the audience, as EA Codemasters officially closes the door on its WRC development project. No future rally titles for the time being out of Codemasters. Their assets have been relocated to F1 and Battlefield for 2025. So then, onto the grid for round 1 of the championship. It's OSR Saturn on pole position on his entry to VSR Phoenix. What a qualifying session by the Frenchman. He lines up against last season's champion, Just Boris, looking to go 2 for 2 here with now his brand new partners at Lamborghini. And it's the first time in, I imagine, a long time for anyone in the audience to see a Lamborghini 1 and 2 here on ACC. A remarkable performance by both drivers. Making that second row then is the Blue Frog in the number 61 Ford Mustang. Chris MCKO8 in the number 81 makes 4th position. White Doctor on his debut makes the top 5 with Aston Martin. Then Regent in 6th, Tyler Vermack 7th, Essenquist in 8th, Soviet Mario in 9th, ETE Geos makes the top 10 for McLaren. VSR Chris makes 11th, Elite Cassie 12th, VSR Funky Fish 13th, Antion 14th, OT 15th, VSR Grizz in 16th, Boyshay 17th, Rafing 18th, Pete 19th, and Twiglet in 20th. Then behind him as we make what is a near 30-car grid today. Down from 20th to 29th is Hin Pappy, Tommy Johansson, Dollar Up, Abok, Taz, Jayco, Smiler, Aussie, and Shawnee Mack. As we get away then for our formation lap, it is a very large grid today. A record highs for 29 entries here for round 1 of season 8. We watch on board then with the first of potentially many pole position starts for OSR Saturn. That was a real hard grip performance and the closest qualifying exchange at the front row I have ever seen in my time as a commentator. 0.002 of a second was the dividing mark over that last lap between Boris and Saturn. Do expect some real wheel-to-wheel action coming into this opening lap. We exit then a very slow run through the S's at turns 2, 3 and 4 to bring us onto the back straight and into this infamous section of the track now where plenty of drivers have had issues over the course of qualifying. Now as we head into what is going to be an hour-long race on the horizon here for round 1 of the championship is the inner loop chicane. Plenty of high side curbs here. It's incredibly easy, especially for our mid-engine cars which comprise the entirety of that front row, to get head over heels and really get the back end loose, as those raised inside curbs, and while it may not look it from here, can really do some damage on the suspension of that car. For the Ford right behind him, it might be smooth sailing here. I think for Blue Frog, it's one of his best opportunities to usurp the race lead. He knows he's got those Lamborghinis dead to rights for acceleration and straight line speed, but manoeuvrability is what OSR Saturn and Just Boris appear to have in droves coming into this round of the championship. We head now down through Chute Curve, turn 6, into one of our many available overtaking opportunities now. The last time we were here at Watkins Glen, we got to see plenty of those demonstrated here from turn 6 and into turn 7, the open hairpin right at the toe curve. Now this is in the boot section of the track. The short layout cuts off at turn 5 down to where turn 9 is. That's used in NASCAR. This layout, however, is used in the IMSA Sports Car Championship. It's what our GTs will be racing on today. Out through the toe then brings us an extra straight here, the boot straight as it's known, as we head down towards turn 8 at the heel. Another good overtaking opportunity. Has a good line through there. And a little bit of mind games can net you some free and easy positions, as we've definitely seen over the course of our last couple of coverages here at Watkins Glen International. But there's going to be insurmountable pressure on the shoulders of OSR Saturn. This is his debut race in VSR. Quite a message to send then by the number 2. Checking around the grid then, you can see it is going to be a very, very tough state of competition from 15th backwards. It is an absolute maelstrom of times and of cars there. Quite a few Audis. You see 3 in a row. Grizz, Rafing, and Pete there. Makes 3 Audis in a row. The 44 and the 11 and the 17. Oh, the 77. My mistake there. So then, 2 in all as we go rolling down towards the start-finish straight just beyond the horizon here of turn 11. For round 1 of the championship, where does it drop between our front row then? A mysterious new set of entries. You can see White Doctor and OSR Saturn in within visual range of one another as we go rolling down towards the line here in VSR Phoenix on the opening round of Season 8, live here on TRTN from Watkins, Glen International. It is going to be a fantastic opening round on the horizon. We're green and racing already. What a start it's been by the front row. And just getting away now is OSR Saturn from Just Boris. The 2 Lamborghinis side by side down into the 90. Front from rear. We can see already issues in the background. We can see signs are flying through turn 1 as already a maelstrom of cars make their way up to the S's for the first time. 59 minutes on the chart. Let's get this rolling. And what a start it's been by both Lamborghinis. Right behind them, you can see already issues amok there. That was, I think Tyler Vermack was caught up in the fray there. I think I caught a name there. Oh my word! Did you see that in the background? Up through the S's. Oh my word! Cars head over heels. You can see Johansson, Shawnee Mack, and Tyler Vermack all caught up in the fray there. Further down the line is Ozzy and Smiler. How on earth did that just play out? Oh my! Up through the S's, a real crunch in the back rows. At the moment then, Boris just tucks in behind OSR Saturn as the Blue Frog lines up behind him. Heading into the toe for the first time then at turn 7. Definitely not the race start some of these drivers were thinking of coming in around 1 of the championship, but better to have the mistakes here than down the line when a championship's at stake. Heading down towards turn 8, Just Boris then in hot pursuit of our newcomer OSR Saturn. We stay on board for a moment's time then with last season's champion looking to challenge for that front row. See right behind him, things are heating up on that second row. Do expect to see Chris MCKOA and the Blue Frog go wheel for wheel here in the next couple of corners. You can see that Mustang and the Ferrari are absolutely pitched with each other. Right now, it's the story of 2 for Lamborghini up at the front row. One of the most ambitious starts we've ever seen from Automobili Lamborghini. And it's right here and now in VSR Phoenix Season 8. Down towards the 90 then. Now at flying speed. OSR Saturn using every available inch of the track. Now runoffs are not to be unexpected through turn 1. As a matter of fact, the white line exists after the rumble curve, so a lot of drivers can get cheeky with track limits down through turn 1. Do expect to become that as a recurrent theme. We're going to have to check in behind though. You can see White Doctor is looking to make some moves already. We're going to try and get on board with the Aston Martin that is now up ahead of Chris MCKO8. So very well done there. Down the back straight by the Aston Martin. He's 0.7 of a second at the moment from the Blue Frog, but he still has to worry about Chris MCKO8, who has properly reinvigorated himself since his departure from Porsche. His move in a Ferrari has been probably one of the best comebacks we've seen since last season. And it is making for one hell of a top 10 battle at the moment. Checking around the field, you can see the death toll for that opening incident. Tyler Vermack, Ozzy, Smiler, Tommy Johansson and Hin Hin Pappy among several others caught up in the fray. VSR Dollar up then with Lexus makes 22nd position. 56 minutes left to go. We're nearly 5 minutes into the session and it has been a very interesting start to say the least. The 2 Lamborghinis are slowly finding more and more pace to peel away from the Ford in 3rd place at the moment. See, VSR Abok was looking to try his luck there against Dollar up on their way around turn 8 of the heel curve. No dice, though, for the number 27. See here, Regent and SN Quiz. They're fighting for 6th at the moment. Soviet Mario right behind them. Makes 2 McLarens from 2 Fords inside the top 10. Things stabilising up front. As you can see, it's 0.4 of a second, actually, at the front row. We see VSR Antion was looking for a move just then on Elite Cassie, but backs out of it, out of better intuition. A bit of trouble there on the back end. VSR Funky Fish looks to be challenging VSR Chris for position. Get used to hearing VSR plenty of times here. A lot of tags under the VSR banner. Funky Fish against Chris then as we head towards the back straight. We'll be checking in with our front row battle in a moment's time. But let's see where the penny drops between Aston Martin and Porsche on our way to the inner loop chicane. As we get down towards the inner loop chicane here, it's a very easy gambit to get back end wide here this section of the track. Down towards turn 5 we go. No dice at the moment for Funky Fish. He's just going to have to hold his nerve here as Grizz and Oatsy are slowly making their way up towards him. See Elite Cassie here in 14th position. A bit of damage on that BMW. Not the best of starts, but he'll be looking to recuperate his losses over the course of the next 55 minutes. First of which, coming on a move here on VSR Oatsy. It's side by side between the pair of them at turn 7. Where does the BMW emerge then? It's still going to be side by side. It's a drag race. V8 versus inline 6. BMW versus McLaren. Oatsy versus Elite Cassie. As we head down towards turn 8, the BMW's gone on the inside. Is he going to be he's going to get switched back on by the Oatsy? By the McLaren of Oatsy, I should say. Not this time around, though. Checking in very quickly here. The story of 2 McLarens towards the back of our top 10. Soviet Mario and ETE Giles. Former drivers for BMW and Ford now getting their own slice of action here at Watkins Glen as they head down towards turn 1. The SN Crease and that was Regent side by side there. We were trying to get on board with them, but with the sheer amount of cars, we've not been able to get any luck there in covering them. That is a mighty shame. We can see, though, Regent emerges ahead of SN Crease, and it could become a 4-car battle very, very shortly. So I'm going to quickly try and get back on board. Car firmly sandwiched in the middle. Just lost that position out, but looking right behind him are the 2 McLarens, Soviet Mario and ETE Giles. They nearly went side by side down that back straight. No dice at the moment. They head towards turn 5. Just under 10 minutes in. Let's get back on board with some of the other action going on around the track. See, Boy Shea was looking for a move there on VSR Antion ahead of him. Oatsy gets a little bit wide. Bit squirrely there on the McLaren. He loses position out to Grizz in the Audi. Looking to try his luck there. You saw it moved his way to the inside down at turn 6. So having a look at our top 10, nearly 10 minutes into the session. It's the story of 2 up front. The 2 Lamborghinis are now peeling away by just over a second. It's OSR Saturn from Just Boris. Blue Frog makes 3rd, White Doctor 4th, Chris MCK08 in 5th, with Regent 6th, SN Crease in 7th, Soviet 8th, and Giles in 9th. Rounding out the top 10 is VSR Chris. Getting on board then with this real scrum at the back of the top 10 at the moment. Soviet Mario, ETE Giles, and SN Crease all in arm's length to one another. Regent now falling into sight. 2 McLarens versus 2 Fords. Let's see what goes on. A transatlantic affair here in Schuyler County. And it looks to be potentially side-by-side action for SN Crease, but just like last lap, he's backing out of it there. I think he's trying to get inside Regent's head, size him up for a greater move after turn 1. He's very nearly in it, but momentum is on the side of the number 420 going up through the S's. You can see SN Crease is still right with him. It could be contact between the pair of them as we saw on the opening lap, but not this time around. He's stayed razor thin to the back end of Regent's car. Let's see what SN Crease can do on his way down towards the inner loop chicane. This is all in the fight for 6th position right now. And he still has to tuck in behind. He's just slowly chipping away at the confidence of the number 420 in front of him. Heading now down through the outer loop at turn 5. Bear in mind, this is not an easy decision for him to make, whether he chooses to jump now or later, because the moment he hesitates, this driver won't. Soviet Mario barreling towards the inside of him, but he's covered off at turn 6. This is incredible stuff. You see at the moment, Soviet Mario and ETE Giles practically pushing each other up to the back end of that Mustang. There goes wide, though. Soviet Mario drops a position off to Giles on the exit of turn 7. Was that a little bit of push to pass? Does anyone really know? Let's have a look on the replays here. You saw how close they were to one another. The way that McLaren, no, he's just overcooking his brakes then. No malpractice to be found there. Let's see if we can get some onboards from SN Crease in his fight there for position. We do see already running into traffic as our front 2, but let's quickly get on board with the Mustang we were following from the menu. Smiler takes a dive off at turn 1. And there's Regent. There is Essenquist, eerily close to the back end of his fellow Ford. Almost running him off the track at the 90 there. See the two McLarens. E.T. Gilles from Soviet Mario, 8th and 9th. Not too far away from them, but he's tunnelled in on the back end on the number 420, and he's going to have the momentum coming out of turn 4, but is it going to be enough? It's been 2 rounds in a row. Succeeding the position goes Regent, so Essenquist is going to jump up into 6th position on his way to the inner loop chicane. Can he hold his mantle, though, as he exits the inner loop chicane into turn 5? See, Regent had a look there towards the inside, but he was quickly cut off by the number 888. On our way down towards turn 7. These two Mustangs have been inseparable. We want to try and get a look around the track. We'll just follow on with them here towards the major braking zone. At turn 7 we go. And not this time around, so we'll catch up with them in a moment's time. Having a look around the field to see where our nearest battles are. And you'd be spoiled for choice as Jayco and Abok most recently fall into our iron sights, but that drops away through turn 6. Having a look then, it's 0.6 of a second. The two McLarens, familiars to the battle behind. And that's E.T. Gilles and Soviet Mario. They're slowly closing in on Regent. So is the pressure starting to build on the number 420 here? Is he starting to crack a little bit with only 10 minutes covered? Checking around as well. Taz slowly reeling in Pete, former McLaren driver, now in the Audi, and Taz, a former Ford driver, now in the McLaren. So very interesting dichotomy to be studied there behind them. The Audi and the Mercedes of Rafing and Twiglet are having their own little share of a battle. Boy Shea and Otzi look to be getting side by side very, very shortly. The Lamborghini is properly closing ground, but in the same stroke, Otzi is closing ground back up to Grizz. Who goes for it first, though, on the way down towards turn 1? They're going to hold short. We can see an observer for now, but soon to be a participant in his own respect. VSR Antion, the winner in the bronze category in that Ford Mustang. So having a look around the field here, you can see Just Boris still at all times 0.4 of a second from OSR Saturn. These two have been inseparable from the word go, and they have properly started to feed off of each other's pace here to get away from the rest of the pack. They're nearly 2 seconds up the field from the Blue Frog in the number 61. Now we're checking in with Boy Shea. Looks go for an inside move on Otzi. Is he going to be able to make it stick on the exit of turn 5? He knows the McLaren's got more momentum on exit, but he just squeezes him out. Is he going to have a look back towards the inside at turn 6? Boy Shea overcooks his brakes, so Otzi's got the green light here, but he misses his opportunity for now. But you can see the inklings of this great insecurity about the brakes on these Lamborghinis, and really, we've only got to see that front row work off of each other. You can see the real glaring flaws of the Lambo rear its ugly head. You can see Antion was in at the wall. That looks like potential damage over the rear spoiler. No, actually, from our perspective there, that's corrected itself. But we did see him take a little bit of a clock against the Armco barriers on the exit of turn 7. Trying to get side by side with Otzi. We're watching in with Boy Shea. This is the fight for 13th position against VSR Grizz at the moment. Audi versus Lamborghini, the sister cars, now squabbling with one another. The number 7 versus the number 44 will stay on board for the moment here with Boy Shea. Predicted at a top 10 in qualifying today, is making the most of the opportunity he's been given. Just under 15 minutes covered and already plenty to discuss. See behind them as well, Antion and Pete very, very close to one another. It's really battling every single place you look. You're very, very spoiled for choice in this opening round. Watkins Glen has proven to be an absolute gladiators arena for our 29 drivers in this race. Checking around the field then to see where our next fights are coming from. I want to get a look at the battle that was going on behind our most recent one just gone. It's Pete versus Rafing versus Twiglet versus Taz. It is a very interesting one. You can see that Pete's slowly escaping the battle. The Audi behind him then is Rafing, the turquoise number 11. Defending from the Mercedes of Twiglet, former driver for Lexus, and then behind them is Taz, former driver for Ford, now with McLaren. All three of them giving it absolute hell for leather over the inner loop chicane. So we'll stay on board with Rafing. Bear in mind, VSR Rafing is a bronze category driver. He's going toe-to-toe at the moment with silver drivers, Taz and Twiglet. Twiglet, by the way, who dropped position to Taz, is now off by 2.5 seconds. That was trouble for the Mercedes out through turn 5 and 6. You see up ahead of them, is an imminent battle for 15th position. We want to get on board with that ASAP. So let's go away from racing for the time being and get on board with the driver at the back of this 3-car battle. It's Audi Pete going for the inside. Very nearly made contact with VSR Antion. That was a moment of pure desperation to get that car slowed down. I don't think he was anticipating the Ford to try and slot back in so close to the nose of the number 77 on his way down through turn 8. We're now through turn 9 and 10 in towards turn 11 in a moment's time. And it has been scrummages as far as the eye can see here at Watkins Glen. A fantastic opening foray for Season 8. If this is anything to go by, the next 11 weeks of racing are going to be absolute cinema. Down towards turn 1, you can see Rafing holding centre mass of that road behind Pete. He's trying to get inside his head again. And this is the mind games we've been discussing all the way through Season 7. You see it on prominent display every time two drivers get into a battle. Always starts off as the chestnut checkers routine. Trying to get inside your opponent's head, trying to false out a move. It's much, much easier to do that than it is to actually try and go side by side. Greater risk and potential for a big off, as we've seen on a handful of occasions at the moment. What are the mind games on display between both the Audis here in the fight for 17th position? Well, we'll catch up with them in a moment's time as we take a look further up ahead. So we can see VSR Chris just slowly approaching that battle for 7th. We want to get on board, though, with the car at the front of that fight for 7th position. So let's try and find him here. It's Regent, otherwise going by FR77. The number 420 Ford Mustang is really having to hold down the fort against both McLarens on his way into turn 9. This is all in the defending fight at the moment for 7th position. Ahead of him there is Esenquis, who's already up in a comfortable 6th and slowly trying to reel in the top 5, courtesy of Chris MCK08's number 81 Ferrari, further up the road from all of these drivers on screen at the moment. I think it's still a closer case for the fight of 8th position further behind him between Gilles and Soviet. Those two have been inseparable over the course of this race. We're over 15 minutes in. It's OSR Saturn now with a 2-second gap over the last data metric there to just Boris. Blue Frog 3rd, White Doctor 4th, Chris MCK08 in 5th, Esenquis 6th. We're watching with Regent at the moment, who's fighting to defend 7th position from the two McLarens behind him. ETE Gilles and Soviet Mario 8th and 9th. VSR Chris makes top 10 for Aston Martin. That's 2 Astons inside the top 10. Lee Cassie right behind by about 3.5 seconds to make 11th position. Bear in mind, we still have a pit stop left to go. We'll be expecting those in about 10 to 15 minutes time. A bit of an awkward run around the inner loop is going to bring those two McLarens back into frame for Regent. That is not what he needed after pulling such a mighty gap. We're going to have to get back on board then before we discuss the rest of the field. Down towards turn 6 we go at the shoot curve. ETE Gilles is really piling the pressure now onto Regent. The question is, we've seen his performance under pressure, high pressure conditions such as this back during his time with Ferrari. How exactly does that compute in the Ford? How does that translate to a performance in a fundamentally different machine? On both fronts here, Gilles is a more regular driver of the Ford, Regent's a more regular driver of the Ferrari, so it's sort of that dichotomy flipped on its head. The front engine driver goes mid-engine, the mid-engine driver goes front-engined. We get to see what the end result of all of the drivers in the paddock swapping cars to fundamentally different machines is. You end up with these grids that are infinitesimally close to one another. Razor thin gaps at all times, and you can see that demonstrated firmly on display as every single time we've looked behind Regent, we've seen how close things have stayed between Soviet and Gilles and the two McLarens. Chris not too far away at all either. We do have a yellow flag out though, and it's for the inner loop chicane. Let's try and go and find them then. It's the number 71 car in trouble, making their way to turn 5, and it is Tommy Johansson in the Aston Martin. Just checking in there. Doesn't look to be any major damages. I think it was just a bit of a balance upset on his way around the inner loop chicane. So we're back in the green flag conditions with 41 minutes, just under 42 minutes left to go. Having a look around, we can see Smiler trying to unlap himself from Abok. Not the best of starts for him, but we saw just how crazy things got up through the S's on that opening lap. Speaking of Aston Martins, here's White Doctor, the leading Aston on his first race here in VSR Phoenix. As far as we're led to believe, the number 54 is really wowing expectations, just like OSR Saturn, who currently leads the fray by just over a second. These new names have come in and took the competition by storm. I don't see White Doctor staying in silver for very, very long. I can definitely see a gold marker on his name possibly even by round 2 of the championship. It is a real royal performance in the number 54 Aston. He looks to currently try and fight for a podium as he's closing in on the Blue Frog, a seasoned pack fighter in front engine machinery. So this ought to be a very interesting demonstration of his ability up against a seasoned veteran crowd. We'll catch up with them in a moment's time. We have a look around the field yet again. We want to see where things left off in the battle of our two McLarens as we check in with the observer from up ahead. Regent still being forced to fend off two McLarens and an Aston Martin for good company. But the good news is he's reeling in SN Crease slowly but surely over the course of the last lap there. He's still maintained a vital gap by under 2 seconds. But I suppose the bad news is that the McLarens have closed that gap as well down to him. So it may be a case where it's just too little too late by the time he can get to SN Crease. He may not be the only one trying for 6th position. As we can see, Soviet Mario goes extraordinarily wide through the 90, but rejoins the track still ahead of the Aston Martin. But he'll have to worry about VSR Chris as we head up through the S's. The Aston's got plenty more momentum to play with. Let's try and get on board with the Aston Martin, if we can. The reason why we try and go through the menu like this, we see side by side and up ahead, momentum game playing wonderfully for VSR. Chris, that was a big slide by Soviet, very well held by the 26. The reason why we try and scroll through the menus like this is so that we can have not only the external camera, it's also so we can get the onboard cameras like this to give you a lovely dynamic viewing experience from home. If only things were slightly more streamlined on ACC. Never was necessarily designed to have a spectator mode. This is definitely quite jerry-rigged as far as things go. Up around the toe curve, then turn 7. Chris now up ahead of Soviet, up into 9th. A slow but steady drive for Aston Martin to start gaining positions here. That's the same story for White Doctor. And speaking of, let's see if we can get back on board as we quickly check in at our front row. Now the gap just to around a second between the two Lamborghinis of OSR Saturn and Just Boris. Checking in very briefly here, Twigler v Taz continues to rage on. The Mercedes versus the McLaren on our way down towards turn 8. He's just too far away to be looking for a move anytime soon. Twigler on his first drive with Mercedes since his exit from Lexus. That was one of his more recognisable roles over the course of Season 7 as being our resident Lexus driver. That responsibility now befalls to Daily Boy. As we see ETE Giles makes an early jump to the pit lane with 38.5 minutes left to go. Now we have to wonder, what is the going strategy for ETE Giles? We know that he is typically quite crafty when it comes to his pit strategies. That's what's netted him a handful of very secure race leads every now and again. It's what helped him pick up 2 race wins. Not only that, it was raw pace in the Mustang. We've seen already his capacity to stay eerily close to all manner of driver. So keep a close eye on ETE Giles. Right now, though, Soviets retook the position from Chris. The Aston and the McLaren battle continues to rage on, and it's absolute touring car level hell for leather through the inner loop chicane. Now, we were definitely quite worried about the mid-engine cars coming into this section of the track. Anywhere that involves a significant amount of weight transfer and then couple that with an uneven surface is usually the mid-engine cars' kryptonite, as we saw with Lamborghinis over the course of the practice and qualifying sessions for today's race. But Soviet Mario has been one of a handful of drivers today to firmly disprove these rumours and has shown any kind of naysayer to the mid-engine platform firmly wrong coming into this round. So all power to him. That is a proper feral drive in the number 26. Oh, here's hoping for more as we see now Elite Cassie. He made his debut last season at Bathurst, was a staple talent from that point onwards, was always one to keep an eye on. Makes his first drive with BMW here in VSR after a half-season long foray with Mercedes AMG, just getting around the issues with the BMW platform. It's a tad bit sharper and a tad bit snappier than the Mercedes, so I've been told, and that's definitely going to be something he'll be wrestling with over the course of the next 37 minutes. He's in 10th by 3.7 seconds to the nearest car, that being Chris in 9th position. But there goes the BMW on our next run of pit lane entries. Let's go and then have a look at the state of affairs going on in the front, because we've seen the 999 drop away by some distance there. Just Boris now down to 4th, yet to have taken a pit stop, so one is left wondering what on earth happened. You can see a little bit of damage, and there, that big compression as he launches himself over the curbs. The car slams back down, it bounces 2 or 3 times before he can regain proper control of the back end. That may be an indication there could have been some proper incident for Just Boris that we missed out on, but what it has given is given OSR Saturn a supreme lead of this race. One that I imagine he'll be using to leverage an early pit stop on this lap at the earliest possible time. Speaking of Lamborghinis, Boy Shea now up into the top 10th. That was because of that pit stop we saw earlier on. Out of Elite Cassie with BMW. See right now, this is OSR Saturn. Now the very firmly crowned race leader here in round 1. What is the going rates for the newcomer as we head towards the midway mark of this race? Well, a lot of drivers have already made their ambitions very clear to make a way into an early pit lane run. Saturn is looking to hold things strong towards the middle. It doesn't show any signs of slowing down. You can see Tommy Johansson in the background was just sneaking his way into the pit lane. We'll catch up with Saturn in a while's time. Checking in with Pete and Twiglet now. Heading down into turn 8, the Audi 0.6 seconds from the Mercedes at this time. Further up the road, another Audi and a McLaren. Speaking of, here's VSR Racing in the number 11, the turquoise Audi, now being pursued by Taz MCFC in the McLaren number 996. Checking in here, White Doctor lapping Elite Cassie on his pursuit of the top. Well, it was going to be the top 3. I think once we see what sort of the plan is for the 999, as right now Josh Boris is in the pit lane. So whatever did happen has now forced him to make his pit stop, whether that was his intention or not. We have seen before Josh Boris does like to go quite late for his pit lane runs, as we saw all the way through Season 7. But maybe the move to Lamborghini has been a big gamble, one that he was able to capitalise on in Suzuka on his exhibition run at the end of the championship last season. But has this been a gamble worth making? Now, there were a few ideas being floated as to what Boris was going to take coming into Season 8. Some said Mustang, some said Huracan. Some even said he was possibly going to go to, say, Aston or Ferrari. But at this rate, it is now set in concrete with the regulations for Season 8. No vehicle swaps allowed. He's going to have to stick with that Lamborghini over the course of the next 11 weeks and 14 rounds of racing. Is this the choice worth making? Well, it's, I think, a little too early to tell. So we have had word in from Just Boris, chiming into our chat saying, and I quote, "Such a shame, number 4 is a blind idiot." His words, not mine. So there was an incident then up front, and let's go and find who the number 4 in question is. Now, having a look around the field, as we scroll through a handful of different battles here and there, Hin Hin Pappy and Aussie 207, by their lonesome towards the back of the field, we're looking, however, for the number 4. That's our current objective, and it's Shawnee Mack, one of the new drivers in bronze, that has already found himself the centre of ire of last season's champion. And from Just Boris there chiming in chat, you can see that's the end of his run today, with him suggesting that might be the end of his time in VSR Phoenix unless something is done about the back markers. So definitely a bit of controversy to kick the season off. Now, we were expecting maybe a bit of tit-for-tat drama across the paddock with that opening incident, but it seems that things have gone nuclear towards the halfway mark of round 1. We do wish Just Boris all the best, as he has been chiming into our streams every now and again. And it has been a pleasure covering his championship foray through Season 7. Hopefully this is not the end of the road. And we hope to see him again in round 2. We can't confirm that at this time. We're watching on board then with the second of the front row Lamborghinis, and still leading this race by a confident margin now is OSR Saturn. There's been a very calm, very measured performance by Saturn, I must say. For a name to have come out of left field and already start wearing expectations, it is eerily reminiscent then of Just Boris's performance coming into Season 7, now with a brand new name. History repeats itself, and it seems that here on TRTM we've got an innate habit of causing that to happen. A good example is when we were covering Season 1, now into Season 2 of the Sunday League, and our other contractors at NLRL. We've had a very similar story play out there as well, where a driver has come out of left field with an older machine. Started off in Season 1 with an Aston Martin V12 Vantage, Season 2 now with a Lexus RCF, and is dominating the championship. And I think we're seeing that now again. A driver has come out of left field and is properly wowing expectations. We're seeing here with Audi Pete, formerly VSR Pete, Making his way through the inner loop chicane. Elite Cassie in hot pursuit, though. Watch that BMW fly. Looking his way to the inside already. It's a very vigorous run in Sector 1 by Elite Cassie. 2 for the price of 1. He leapfrogs Taz. Now leapfrogs Audi Pete on his way down towards turn 6. That is properly elbows out stuff by the 98. Having a look here. White Doctor is already onto the podium, but he's hungry for more, and what is definitely the Twilight Drive, even for his first entry into silver. I think it'll be very shortly up to the gold category, had I any mind about it. And he's hungry for more. He wants second place off of the Blue Frog. Now, this would be a very grand way for Blue Frog to kick off his championship endeavours. He knows that tit for tat, most of these races on the calendar, the Ford is more stable than the leading Lamborghini. The number 4 in trouble again, that's Shawnee Mack. The 207 also in trouble, that's Aussie. So yellow flags aloof from Sector 2 to Sector 3. Both White Doctor and Blue Frog aiming for the pit lane. Yellow flags continue to fly then in those sectors. We're going to have a look around the track to see where our next fights will be coming from at the midway mark here. Chris MCKOA also coming into the pits. We now hit that halfway mark. And with plenty of pit stops on the horizon, we'll be checking in at the standing order in a few minutes' time. See Hin Hin Pappy there, brand new livery. The sort of chromish gold and the red accents on that 777 Ferrari, giving way to the race leader. Regent and SN Quiz, after both of their pit stops, are reunited on track, but I think they've got a ETE-shaped problem ahead of them, as before they made their way to the pit lane, that McLaren was behind both of them from the defence of 7th position. So it's going to make an interesting state of affairs inside the top 10. We have yellow flags out again. This time the number 996 was in trouble. Not entirely sure what happened, but that seems to be an area of the track that has been catching up quite a lot of drivers. This is the view from Aussie 207. He's beached there off the exit of turn 10. Not the way to kick off your championship hopes, but that Porsche has definitely proven to be a gamble potentially not worth making for most. Speaking of Porsches, where others have struggled around the 992, others have flourished. Jayco 14 on a late pit stop strategy could find his way to a cheeky top 10 in the 424. It has been a very, very interesting opening round for this one down in the bronze category. Having a look around the field then, Soviet emerges from behind Regent and in between himself and SN Kui. So the McLarens and the Fords of the top 10 reunited on track with 28 minutes to spare. Let's see where the penny drops, because Soviet Mario has been delivering on one of the most entertaining drives of this event, properly battering that McLaren around every single corner. He's driving it like he stole it. It is really that kind of gung-ho attitude that we love to see in these races. We saw that Soviet and, by contrast, some of the drivers that shared the midfield with him, like Blue Frog and Regent, were among the most entertaining drivers to watch. I think one of the best moments from last season was at the Donington Super Sprint round. Those two rounds gave rise to some of the most entertaining spectacles of racing I think we've seen all season. Right now, with the race leader into the pit lane, let's have a look at who emerges for the time being as our race leader. And it's VSR Racing leading with Audi Sport. Admittedly, this is a very long-winded pit stop strategy, and OSR Saturn emerges only 9.7 seconds behind him. See, Racing, for the time being, leads this race with Audi. I must say, it has been a long, long time since I personally, as a commentator, have seen Audi made their way onto the track in these ACC races. It was around sort of the early days of when I started covering the Sprint series, to where Audi was quite a prominent figure. A lot of people were teetering towards the Audi. I think one of the best battles I've ever had in the short time I competed on ACC was against an Audi at the Mount Panorama circuit. That was a real fantastic battle. I think that's what kept me very captivated with GT racing, even long after my ability withheld me from competing in it. Now we check in here. Two Aston Martins separated by race distance. Tyler Vermack and Chris making their way around turn 5. Now, Chris has a bit of a gambit to settle here with Soviet Mario and SN Quiz. Those are practically positions dangling in front of him here. He just needs to find a little bit more pace in that Aston, and what a mighty livery. We've seen plenty of drivers attempt their sort of best renditions of the Aston Martin signature racing green. And really, this is a rather nice one. I think another really nice one is in the Aston Martin at the moment of White Doctor. That sort of dark pearl green is really, really eye-catching. Speaking of, here is White Doctor now up into third ahead of Blue Frog. But down past OSR Saturn, it's until we see where the Audi emerges of VSR Racing as to where White Doctor looks to be aiming to finish. By the looks of it, it probably will be second place on debut. So two brand new drivers comprising the front row on their first race in VSR is something I wasn't expecting to be able to see in my time working with these guys. And honestly, what an opening round we have been given. Plenty of drama, plenty of juicy gossip to discuss across the paddock, a very chaotic start, and amongst it, plenty of entertaining battles, and we're far from over. We're just having a quick gander here at the Aston Martin as it's now moving up and ahead of the Ford. We're going to be checking in with the rest of our fights before the end of this race, and there is a very sizable one here between cars on varying distances of the race. We're going to have a look here with VSR Funky Fish, who's fighting with VSR Otzi for 12th position. So we'll stay on board with these two as they head down towards the 90. You can see Elite Cassie is slowly closing the gap in that BMW, and he's had a very enthusiastic performance this race to make up for lost time. And he'll soon be an active element of this fight for 12th position. Let's stay on board then with the attacking car for now, VSR Funky Fish. Is momentum on the side of the Porsche? Now, straight line speed is one of its arguably worst qualities as one of the few remaining naturally aspirated cars on the grid, similar to the V8s, the Mustang and the Lexus. It really does struggle sort of to give the same kind of grunt as the turbo engines, and that's especially going to be felt going uphill through those S's. So we head towards the downhill section, momentum will be on the side of the Porsche, so it's a very flip-flop performance in the 992. You'll have it in some laps, and the others you won't. And it is really two extremes on either side of it for the Porsche. It is either a 100% or 0% kind of car. Nuance is not something that exists with the Porsche 911, even though it has to be driven in the most surgical and precise manner of any car on the grid. As a machine and functionally, it is only really 100 or 0. That's why you'll either see drivers struggle from start to finish with this car, or as we can see here with Funky Fish, are really blossoming in this environment. The car is really working with, it's flowing like mercury for him at the moment. And as someone who's known a team of drivers to use the Porsche 911 in these online endurance and sprint races, I can imagine the degree of anxiety that goes on in trying to coerce this machine to your own will over the course of an hour-long race, let alone over the course of, say, a 5 or 6 hour race. It is a very, very tough car to master. But the end result is a properly competent pack fighting machine. We can see 3 drivers all in different strengths of their careers, all giving a very good go of it at the moment. Elite Cassie then has closed the ground to Funky Fish. You can see ahead of him is VSR Otzi. He was the Silver Division champion of Season 7, now makes his move to McLaren, away from Aston Martin. Elite Cassie did try for the inside. Funky Fish now playing defensively to hold up the Gold Series driver in the number 98. Now this is all 4 position. They don't have to move over an inch to each other. It's to give 3 different championships their own unique opportunity to fight for a title. Of course, the one everyone wants to be in is that gold category, and I think where Elite Cassie wants to be in right now is ahead of both of these two. See, Racing emerges 14th, so that will have shuffled the top 13 positions ahead of him up as to where they will be before the end of this race. And having a look then with just under 22 minutes left to go, it's OSR Saturn from White Doctor, Blue Frog in 3rd, Chris MCK in 4th, ETE Gilles not too far away from Regent, makes 4th through 6th, with Gilles in 5th, Regent 6th, behind him SN Quiz and Soviet Mario very, very close to one another in the fight for 7th. We'll be getting on board with them in a moment's time. Behind them is VSR Chris Boyche, makes the top 10 for Lamborghini. VSR Otzi trying to run from Funky Fish and Elite Cassie in 11th position. You see there, Funky Fish 12th, Cassie 13th, Rafing 14th, Antion 15th, Pete 16th, Twiglet 17th, Jaco 18th, Grizz 19th, Dollar Up 20th, Tyler Vermack in 21st after that start, where he got caught up in the maelstrom. We're going to quickly check here. This move on the inside by Elite Cassie. Is he going to be able to make it stick on the Porsche? No, outbroken at turn 1, but he might have the momentum on the exit. On our way up towards turn 2, 3, and 4. I think he's just got this one nipped in on the number 982. He knows he's got a little bit more to give in a straight line. Oh my word. What an off there between those three. Oh my goodness. Turned around at turn 2. That is disastrous for both of them. And caught up by them was VSR Rafing from 14th position, as we see here, just heading up. And it squeezes in. There was nothing he could have done by that point. That was a split-second lapse in judgment. That has been disastrous for the pair of them. They dropped down a handful of positions for their efforts. Elite Cassie will not be happy by the end of this race, not one bit. We're back in the green flag conditions for now. And let's go back on board with a battle we've been wanting to study for some time, but couldn't because we were watching some of the other stuff to play out. Is the fight for what is now, I believe, looking behind, yes, the fight of 7th position. Soviet Mario versus SN Queese. 2-star labels over the course of last season. The number 4 still in the pit lane at the moment. I believe that is still Shawnee Mack, who has not had, by most comparisons, the best start to the championship, even for bronze. Now having a look then, this is the battle of 7th. We're watching on board yet again with the Mustang, who's found himself under the spotlight several times over the course of round 1. In the silver category is SN Queese in the 888. Soviet chasing him for position. Ahead of him, ETE Giles, all now within equal distances of one another, 0.4 of a second. This could actually be the fight for 6th position in a moment's time, as with great momentum is that Mustang on the McLaren. Oh, what on earth happened between them there? Serious desync for ETE Giles. You can see the hesitance to try and pass him by SN Queese as we go into the inner loop chicane. Something is amiss. It's very high ping between the pair of them. This could lead to an incident. There, desync right then and there has dropped him 2 positions. That is clear as day. Internet connection problems. This is one of the major problems with sim racing, is every now and again you'll end up in these situations where the technology starts to fail you. And you can see there was no contact between Soviet and SN Queese. And admittedly, the Mustang did a very good job to hold that impact. But you can't assign any blame to that. You can see the red markers on the left-hand side of your screen down by the manufacturer logos indicate ping levels. And for those of you that don't know, that's roughly an indication as to how high your latency is or how bad the lag you'll be experiencing is, especially when connecting internationally. And that is pretty much what caused that incident dead straight between the pair of them. And you can see it's only getting worse at the moment for the 888 as he drops down to 9th. So checking around the field, Hin Hin Pappy's into the pit lane as well in the 777. That is a mighty livery on that Ferrari, I must say. Some of these livery choices, you can tell they've really given it their A game because they're not allowed to change them anymore. No special liveries for this season and no car swaps, being one of those major defining regulation changes alongside the removal of the endurance format. I will sorely miss that, as I think it did give plenty of opportunity to use larger tracks like the Nürburgring, which sadly is without a spot on Season 8's calendar. So having a look around where our nearest fights are kicking off, and you can see a big clump of cars exiting turn 4. ETE Giles nearly side by side with Soviet Mario. They've got lap traffic there with Hin Hin Pappy in the 777. Behind them is VSR Chris chasing from 8th. Right now, we'll stay on board with ETE Giles, who was one of 2 cars with severe desync. SN Queese being the other, who's now down in 9th position. Let's try and get on board with Soviet. I want to see his perspective on this as the attacking car. As really, you've got to think 3 cars alongside, basically. Having a look here very quickly. Antion versus Rafing. This is for 12th position on our way down towards the inner loop chicane. The Mustang does have greater straight line speed, but the Audi's just kept it nipped for momentum. It's going to try and go last in the late breakers there. Very good defence by VSR Rafing to hold his nerve. Really doesn't give it much hesitation over those curbs either. Playing with fire in the number 11. I want to get a perspective then of the attacking car in looking at it here. As the charts continue to recalibrate. Here, from Soviet Mario's perspective, trying to get the leg up on ETE Giles, because that cannot be an easy consideration for him, because now with the desync, you're going to have to give that sort of an extra half car's width on either side lest you be hit by the same kind of issue that befell Essen Kuis a few laps ago. And I think this is definitely something these drivers are going to have to start considering coming into this championship, with plenty of people connecting from around the world. And hang on just a moment, we do have a yellow flag. It's the 982 of Funky Fish has found his way into some trouble. So we see side-by-side action between the two McLarens. Soviet Mario has really licked the stamp and sent it there around the outside up the S's, but he's not alone in this fight. It's three British machines on their way down towards the inner loop chicane. Christie looks to make it nearly three abreast on our way down towards the inner loop chicane. Can't hold his nerve there. E.T. Giles goes right back up ahead. He has to back out of that move. Otherwise, both of them would be taking an early trip to the pit lane. So very well held by Soviet Mario, who realised that playing things hesitantly, especially with Giles' connection up in the air, is just not going to net him the position he wants, not in the time that he's got left, 15.5 minutes left in this race. Time for caution has long since passed us. Having a look around the field again then after that battle, just seeing where any of our other angles could be coming from. OSR Saturn is now far and away leading this race and is looking to take the first win of the season. He'll be starting his championship off right then on his first entry into VSR Phoenix. What an opening then by the Flying Frenchman in the number 2. That is proper stuff. Elite Cassie then is under siege from Antion behind him. He's caught right in the middle of this fight that we saw earlier on go on between Rafing and Antion. We're watching from Rafing's perspective as you can see the orange and grey BMW of Elite Cassie slowly closing into frame. We stay on board with Rafing for the time being. As a matter of fact, we want to try and potentially get on board with Cassie. Just checking in here, as you can see, it's very close between Chris and Giles. We'll stay on board with these two then. You can see we're absolutely spoiled for choice when it comes to available battles. Chris side by side with Giles, who bites the bullet first. It's contact between the pair of them. Oh my word, that is properly hard impact between the pair of them there. You can see they were not lifting for each other at all. It was really who hesitates first, who's the coward in this situation. Neither of them were going to give way. It's the unstoppable force and the immovable object, and just a little nip round the back end there caught Chris into a dead spiral. He was flat on those brakes. Nothing he could have done to get the car stopped in time. He's in the Armco now into the pit lane. A sour end to his race with 13.5 minutes left to go. Potential words then from the stewards on the horizon. That could be an interesting discussion. Fortunately, not one that we have to make here on TRTN. Do not envy the task of having to assess these racing incidents at the end of the day. White Doctor then, we're back on board with the Star Aston of the show then. Two brand new names, OSR Saturn and White Doctor, adorning that top two steps of the podium. Blue Frog's going to be picking up a very healthy podium finish. What a way to start off his championship, especially moving across to Ford, which he looks right at home with, all things considered, as he's a ways away from Chris MCK08. He's nearly 16 seconds down the field from the Ford. Having a look then to where our next fights could be coming from, we can see a clump of cars exiting the outer loop as we speak. White Doctor, Blue Frog and Shawnee Mack. There's only just lapped traffic there. That number 4 has found his way into a few different incidents, to say the least, but the tenacity to keep going is respectable out of Shawnee Mack to get that number 4 to the checkered flag. He's got 12.5 minutes left to go. Checking then, Antion v Elite Cassie. Now, Antion's been able to stick very closely to that BMW. Now, the Ford has fantastic straight line speed. We'll be able to see a little bit of that demonstrated here up through the S's. We'll stay on board with Antion. The winner in the bronze division of last season now makes his way up to silver. He's got a very good run on Elite Cassie, but where is that going to land by the time they get down to the inner loop chicane? He's backed off there. You can see the hesitation from the Ford, not looking to get himself in a similar situation to what we saw only a few laps ago between Chris and Giles. Just slowly buying his time here against a wounded BMW to try and size up 12th position. See there, OSR Saturn ahead of Jayco 14 on screen at the moment. Now watching the defending car's perspective. Now, this is a bit of a turn of the hat for Elite Cassie. He spent the majority of this race on the attacking. Now, as we get towards the last 10 minutes, he's been forced to play defensively up against VSR Antion. We saw it there, that was a disconnect in front of him. Is that car going to reappear, or is it that just a free position netted to the pair of them? Disconnect up ahead of them. They're not going to be arguing with that, but that is not the best way for things to end. So this is soon to be that fight for 11th position. We've also got some interesting stuff playing out between the 54 down at turn 7. Let's just quickly try and catch on board with them as we see Soviet Mario and Regent reunited. Now these two were a proper riot to watch last season. Let's just quickly stay on board with them. They head down into one of our prime overtaking opportunities here, turn 6 and 7. Soviet's going to go very early on the brakes to try and swing it late around the apex. These two know each other like the back of their hands here, so I expect a very solid fight from the pair of them. Layered game between the pair of them. This is all in that fight for the last of those top 5 positions. We'll stay on board with Soviet then on our way down towards turn 8. You can see it's just ever so slightly more grip at the corner exit. A little tap with the Armco barriers wasn't doing Regent any favours, but he's looking for the switchback out through turn 9. Or turn 10, sorry, but it's contact between the pair of them at turn 11. Nearly another trip to the Armco barriers for the Mustang. He's not going to be happy with that touchdown at turn 11. Soviet Mario, though, is up to 5th. Has slowly been reeling his way to a top 4. He's 9.6 seconds away at the moment from Chris MCK08. The question is, can he make a second, almost, by the looks of it here, almost a second and a half per lap to try and close the gap down before the end of this race? That is quite a tall order in the court of Soviet Mario, especially considering he's been riding in the dirty air of plenty of his compatriots around the midfield. Now to be up into that middle of the crowd, up into the pivotal top 5 where most staging points for a fantastic championship bid start. Is it a case where he's just going to try and keep things nice, calm and measured, not overdrive the car, only start to consider pushing the car beyond 90-95% when the time absolutely calls in it, and that'll be when Regent's breathing down his neck if he can manage to bring that Mustang back into form again. 8 minutes 20 seconds left to go then in round 1, and it's been a very exciting one to say the least. And let's just recount the standing order here with the last 8 minutes dawning upon us. OSR Saturn leads the fray by quite some way now. The newcomer is joined on the front row by another new name in this series, White Doctor, who looks to be soon challenged for position by the Blue Frog. Let's in fact stay on board with these two as we recount the rest of the standing order. Chris MCK08, one of his highest finishing standings at the moment since his move away from Porsche. And his first drive with Ferrari, he's up to 4th. Soviet Mario we saw make the top 5 there ahead of Regent. Essen Queisen 7th, ETEG was 8th, Boyche 9th, and Otzi, the Silver Series champion, in the top 10. VSR Antion 11th, Elite Cassie 12th, Audi Pete in 13th, and GTR Twiglet in 14th. So we just see a change of position there, I believe. No, was I mistaken? I guess I was there. A bit of a graphical fidelity update got in the way. So further down the line, Twiglet in 14th, Funky Fish in 15th, Jayco in 16th, Dollar Up in 17th, Tolliver Mac now up to 18th position, slowly reeling up places, I should say, by the end of this race. Wasn't the best of the starts for the number 94. He'll have plenty of time to recuperate. VSR Grizz then in 19th position, rounding out that top 20. Tommy Johansson, VSR Rafing in 21st, Hin Hin Pappy 22nd, Smiler 23rd, Chris 24th, Shawnee Mac 25th. And I'm a spectator there. Wishful Winnings joins us as a spectator in the crowd as well. So I didn't even realise that they logged in multiple spectators. Right now, though, it is a very interesting state of affairs to bring us to the checkered flag. So let's go on board from the onboard cameras now, the fun cameras as I like to call them, in our fight for second place. And right now it says first. I'm a little confused as it looked like maybe disconnect problems for the number 2. That's since resolved itself. There is now that great anxiety for OSR Saturn on what has been a near flawless opening performance, for his connection to sort of give that away from him. I'm sure he'd be absolutely beside himself if something like that were to happen right now. White Doctor would be jumping for joy had something like that occurred. He is seeing where the penny drops in 6 minutes' time as to what has definitely been an interesting and eye-opening season 8 opening round. Up ahead of them there you can see Smiler, Funky Fish and Jayco all within arm's length of one another. We're watching on board the Aston Martin. We see its way of tackling the inner loop chicane. Now these front engine cars, they just absolutely body them. Got a proper rugby player mentality. It's really, if it's there, I'm going through it. The Aston and the Ford epitomise this mindset. It's what makes this such a fantastic battle to watch. The Ford has been buying its time as well, conserving its tyres and slowly but surely reeling in the Aston Martin. So we'll stay on board with these two for just a moment before we check in on the battle going on physically on track right up ahead of them in the battle for 15th. Five minutes left to go then in what has been a fantastic opener here at Watkins Glen International. Our next round takes us to yet another divisive track, and that's the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps. If you thought it was a chaotic start now, wait until we get to Spa next Wednesday, and we'll see exactly where that stacks up. I've seen very few starts at Spa that have not resulted in some degree of a major pile-up. I think one of the craziest starts we've seen at the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps here on TRTN was back actually before we established this as a service, was when we were doing commentary work with GHR, and that was at their 6 hours of Spa, where going up Eau Rouge and Radion, one of the cars was hit so hard up the back end, it rolled and skidded all the way up Radion on its roof. And I'm not even sure the laws of physics can define exactly what happened with that there. There was quite the eye-opener. Up through the S's we go then. You can see the Mustang conserving so much more momentum. It's what reels it into play by the time we're around turn 4, on our way down the back straight to turn 5. In loop chicane up next, you can see neither of them really have many issue in just tackling this like a touring car. They are not dainty machines, these GT3s in particular. They are among the sort of battleships of the category. You can see up ahead at the moment, Funky Fish and Jayco, the two Porsches, are absolutely brawling hell for leather. So we really want to check in with these guys now in their fight for 15th position. So let's go on board with the twin Porsches. Behind them then was the fight we were watching for second place between White Doctor and the Blue Frog. 3.5 minutes left to go, and things have been getting elbows out in the battle for 15th position. Now we're watching on board with VSR Funky Fish, last season's runner-up for the silver categories. You can see VSR Smiler being lapped there from 23rd. Number 982. Both of them are slowly being clocked by the Aston and the Ford. It may become a four-way fight on two different lengths of the race for two different positions up for grabs. As we've seen dropping a position, we've now reeled this into the fight for 14th. Jayco having a bit of a wiry exit though is going to start giving way to our warring duo for second place. So that's functionally the end of our little Porsche spat. As you see here, the two Mustangs reunited before the end of the race. Essen Queese versus Regent. That'll be one to watch before the checkered flag. We're on board with the Blue Frog, who's a ways away from the Aston Martin in front after turn 1. Now as we exit turn 2 into turn 3 and 4, the S's here in sector 1. It's where normally you can reel in at least some time on the Aston, but I think this time around he's just a little too far away for there to be a noticeable effect in the slipstream of the Aston. That is where the Mustang was able to keep a lot of its pace with, as going over the inner loop chicane. Very little issues on that front, but for whatever reason, the Aston is just finding so much more pace up for grabs. Out through turn 5, though, because of the traffic ahead of VSR Funky Fish, White Doctor has had to lift off. He's been hesitant here, and Blue Frog can't get too greedy with the available space in front of him. It's almost an incident there between Funky Fish and White Doctor. I think that was just because the Porsche took one wheel onto the grass. That compression very nearly set in motion. A bit of a nasty off for the number 982. Fortunately so, nothing has occurred this time around. On our way down towards turn 8 then, the Porsche is going to have to give way to Blue Frog and the Mustang. All of this said and done has given White Doctor an extra 0.3 of a second to play with here. So having a look around, As, where on earth? We saw the last time around with the two Mustangs, Essenquist and Regent, were with each other there. We'll have a look here as we enter the final lap, as I believe that, yes, is a disconnect by Essenquist. So we wondered how everything shifted up an extra position we were watching back with the lower positions. That is because the yellow and black of Essenquist is disconnected from this race, and that has got to be quite a bittersweet feeling at the checkered flag there right before the end of this race. He's not going to be particularly happy with that one. We'll just quickly stay on board with our battle for second as it just etches in and out of being a second gap, maybe 1.1, maybe 0.9, but I think this time around it's just too far away, and it might be a secure second place here if he can keep it nice, neat and tidy around the inner loop chicane for White Doctor. He's really going to have to hope that that Mustang can't find any more pace as we head into Sector 2. So we're going to try and get on board with OSR Saturn as he makes his way into Sector 3. The leader is on their final lap here in this race. Checking in with OSR Saturn. It was a very last second entry. Now, they signed up as a reserve coming into Season 8. There was no actual guarantee that they would get the opportunity to race today, but due to some openings in the schedule, it has allowed OSR Saturn to come in and have a go and give it a go. He absolutely has. He has took competition by storm there, going toe-to-toe with last season's champion. Now, I think they would have battled all the way to the checkered flag. Not that it's going to matter too much to this one, because on an opening performance like this, you really can't take it off of this newcomer performance, a brand new race winner, and what a way to kick off Season 8. Winning here in Watkins Glen is OSR Saturn with Lamborghini. What an opening drive indeed. You really cannot argue with a solid result like that. Having a look down the order as we try and catch on board with, as we just see to the checkered flag here, Funky Fish and Jaco. You can see up ahead there was the last of our podium positions. White Doctor, another new name, makes the podium for Aston Martin. It was eerily close between the two Porsches on their way to the checkered flag. We've been watching them for some time. What a podium indeed. White Doctor and the Blue Frog up into that top three. Oh, great way to start their season. I think that's a very early doors promotion to gold for White Doctor on a drive like that. Really could not argue with it there. Soviet Mario will make the top 5. We're watching with Regent here, who is without his sort of fellow forge that he had been fighting with Essenquist, and that is a mighty shame that we lost out on Essenquist before the checkered flag. It would have been a very great result for him. Not the Regent's going to argue with a free position. He's up to 6th at the checkered flag. Very solid performance by him. Tyler Vermack and Boy Shea making their way to the line. They'll finish 15th and 7th. A great result for Boy Shea and a good comeback drive by Tyler Vermack. Looking quickly here, the number 6 and the number 98, it's Otzi and Elite Cassie. And Otzi's kept it nice and tidy, just out of the iron sights of Elite Cassie. Had it been one more lap, I think the BMW might have even been with him, knocking on his door for 8th position. He'll take home a lovely top 10 from all 3 of them there. That is a very grand exiting drive for round 1 of the championship. We'll get the full rundown of the result in a moment's time. We're just going to quickly see if we can scroll on to the number 77. Audi Pete looks to take a top 10. I'm not entirely sure if that is because a lot of drivers have. No, it is in fact a top 10. So OSR Saturn wins in Watkins Glen. White Doctor on the front row. 2 brand new names make an all brand new front row. The Blue Frog makes 3rd. Chris MCK on one of his highest finishing results makes 4th. Soviet Mario 5th. Regent 6th. Boyche 7th. Otzi 8th. Cassie 9th. Pete in 10th. Twiglet in 11th, Funky Fish 12th, Jaco 13th, Dollar Up 14th, Tyler Vermack 15th, Grizz 16th, and Giels in provisional 17th, Tommy Johansson in provisional 18th, Essenquist provisional 19th, Antion provisional 20th. Well, a very busy, let's say, opening round, struggling to keep up with everything that was going on there. Very rarely is it a case where I've been properly overwhelmed for choice. But what an opening round, and especially look at that finishing result between the 2 Porsches of Funky Fish and Jaco, 0.165 of a second. That is incredibly close by any stretch of the imagination, but plenty to discuss. And a new potential championship fighter, or a pair of championship fighters in the form of White Doctor and OSR Saturn. A debut drive to a 1-2 finish is not something you often get to say, but it has been quite a tour de force by OSR Saturn and White Doctor. And this is surely going to set up what is an interesting 11-week-long saga starting today here in VSR Phoenix Season 8. What a race then, and what a result. Very well done to OSR Saturn. First ever race here in VSR, turns it into a win. You couldn't argue with a good result like that. That's all from us though on TRTN. If you're joining us for some of the other events coming up this week, we'll be wrapping things up on the NLRL Console Endurance Series at the 6 hours of Nürburgring. We're in for the long run at the N24 layout this coming Saturday at 6:30. And if you're joining us for the Sunday League, we're at my home circuit of Silverstone, in what a round I am very gleeful to be covering coming up this Sunday. It's going to be a very exciting 8th round of Season 2 as we get towards the end of that championship. And with endings come beginnings then, because what a way to kick things off here in VSR. You'll be joining us next week on Wednesday for round 2 of the championship at the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps. Until then, that's all from us. Take care. Have a good night.